How did somebody you know ruin their life in one day? Story 1. A 19-year-old guy in Sydney ate a slug for a dare. Got rat lungworm disease. Went into a coma for 18 months, woke up a vegetable confined to a wheelchair needing 24-hour care. Died about 10 years later. From eating a single slug. Story 2. I distantly know somebody who tried to cross the US-Canada border without declaring greater than $10,000 in cash, which led to them searching all his stuff and finding no PIN on his computer. He's in jail. Story 3. In college, my ex's friend was pulled over for speeding. He had drugs and alcohol in his system, and when the cop reached in his truck to grab the keys, he panicked and took off, thinking the cop would let go. The cop did not let go and was dragged for quite a ways before eventually falling to the ground and hitting his head, resulting in his death. My ex's friend was charged with capital murder and sentenced to 20 years in a Mississippi state prison. 21 years old and ruined his entire life in one night. Story 4. Stood in the wrong place. He was stood in a bar minding his own business and a fight broke out. He caught an accidental blow to the back of the head and caught his head on a wall on the way down. He never woke up. Story 5. A buddy from high school blew through a stop sign and hit a couple of motorcyclists, killing them both. He didn't stop to render aid and fled the scene. He was busted for vehicular manslaughter and spent 12+ years in prison. He's lucky he can work for his dad, because where he lives now is not kind to felons trying to rehabilitate. Story 6. Had a friend from high school who decided to opt out by jumping off the roof at his mom's house. He landed in such a way that he survived, but is now paralyzed from the chest down, as in, can't even breathe for himself and fully reliant on home health aides and his mom, whom he despised and named as the reason he wanted out of life. It's fair that she was a full-blown addict at this point and was a shite show herself. Story 7. Friend's son was with his recently engaged fiancée who had a serious nut allergy. They were driving not far from Bendigo. They stopped off at a cafe to buy sandwiches. The woman running the cafe assured them there were no nuts anywhere near the sandwiches, so they bought them then went on their way. Driving out away from town, she was nibbling on the sandwiches when she struggled to breathe. He stopped the car, got out, figured what was going on, went to the back of the car to get her EpiPen, which he struggled to find, but by the time he did find it, she was dead. A couple of weeks after the funeral, he got in his car, drove it back to the stretch of roadside where she died, put his foot down on the accelerator and deliberately aimed his car at a power pole. He'd left his mum a note.
Sad lesson to learn here: if you need an EpiPen for an allergy, the only place you should keep it, especially when traveling, is on your person. Get a fanny pack. Be dorky, stay alive.
Story 8. More like a day horribly altered my life. I was a teacher and coach. For a field trip, the principal could not afford 2 buses. So I had to walk about 10 girls to the field trip location and back to school, while the one bus was filled with the rest of the junior high students and faculty. About a mile each way. I chose the girls of my team because they would listen to me outdoors, unlike lots of middle school kids. While crossing the street in the crosswalk with the walk signal in our favor. All the kids went first, and like girls they are clumped together and chatting while walking. I noticed a woman made a left turn into our crosswalk and never saw us as she tried to accelerate to beat an oncoming car. I knew she was going to run right through the girls. I pushed the kids forward, very forcefully. Most of the girls fell onto the pavement in front of other vehicles waiting at their red light. They were badly scraped up, like road rash from me pushing them. But no hospitals or doctors were needed for their scrapes. I don't remember the impact. I remember seeing a Pontiac symbol between the headlights. I came to, and I was in a whole different lane and facing where I had just come from. I could not get up. They say my body went up the car and off the driver's side, tearing the side mirror off the car and breaking her windshield. Horror and sobbing from my student athletes. The girls raised me onto a backboard when the ambulance came, which must have been traumatic. Now, 20 years later, I am still an ambulatory wheelchair user. Can't teach or coach. Can't work at a desk. I have chronic pain. Yes, my life can be really sucky, but I would not change what I did that day. When I get low emotionally from all my limitations, I remember those girls. I watched them go to college, get married, grow into mothers, and hold impressive jobs in their fields. And when they show a photo on Facebook of their happy moment, it recharges me to know they are safe, healthy, and happy. And it reaffirms my decision to save them from harm. Story 9. My friend's brother got too drunk, got violent. Cops came and he fought them. Once restrained, he started threatening to find and kill their children. Never seemed to get his life back on track after that. Story 10. He had just turned 19. Summer after senior year. Dad owns a very lucrative lumber sales and construction company. He got a brand new truck for graduation and was going to start his job after summer ended with his dad. Trained to be a foreman and basically be set for life on a path to retire extremely comfortably by the age of 55. He decided to take a bunch of pills and ran a red light. T-boned a car, killing the driver instantly and crippling the passenger for life. He got off with vehicular manslaughter because his dad forked out big money to get the charges lessened. He served 13 years and got out last year. He just walks around the town now because he can't get work, own a license or vehicle. Story 11. A local dude was sucking the toes of his 14-year-old stepdaughter while she slept. She was awake but too scared to say anything. Mom eventually found out and she hit the fan. Story 12. Worked in Seattle airport and a coworker decided to take his own life by stealing an airplane, fly it in loops around the Pacific Northwest airspace while being chased by the Air Force until finally going nose down. Story 13. Kid down the street had his best friend over and his friend, being a 12 to 13-year-old boy, was being a total dickhead. Kid picks up a shotgun his brother left lying around in the dining room and aimed it at his friend. The friend taunted him. Kid pulled the trigger and filled his friend's head full of buckshot. Two families instantly devastated. Kid went to jail. I occasionally see the friend when I go out for a walk. He's a grown-up now, but is intellectually maybe 4 to 5 years old and will be taken care of by family for the rest of his life. Yes, the friend lived, though with a lot of brain damage. Story 14. Guy I knew in university was inebriated and decided to try and clear a very tall spiked wrought iron fence. He impaled his balls and did not get to keep them.
That was the toll gate.
Story 15. A week ago, my little sister slipped on the ice getting out of her car and hit her head. She didn't think much of it when she had a pounding headache later, figuring she just whacked herself good. Her friend told her to just sit down and take it easy until she started slurring her words roughly 10 hours after the fall. They called an ambulance for her, but she was going into cardiac arrest. Turns out she'd stopped taking her blood thinners she was supposed to be on for clotting issues. The headache wasn't the fall, it was the clot in her leg cutting off blood to the brain. At the age of 26, she never recovered and leaves behind a 4-year-old and 2-year-old. Story 16. My daughter's middle school teacher exchanged nudes with a 14-year-old on Discord across state lines. Now he's in one of the worst New Jersey county jails. She is in the paper and his career is over obviously. Story 17. Some kid in our senior year of high school pulled the fire alarm every day. He was getting away with it for a while. The school had town officials and the chief of the fire department and police come in and talk about the dangers. The town would send trucks and be without them if there was another emergency. None of that worked. When they offered a reward, the kid's friends ratted him out. His family had to pay for all those calls, he was expelled from school and didn't graduate. Story 18. My dad once saw a patient who was a seemingly normal, well-adjusted family man in his early 40s with no major health issues and in good physical shape. He was in town for a business trip and had suddenly gone blind. Come to find out, while out with his colleagues, he had tried coke for the first time in his life. It was cut with something that created a blockage in his optic nerve and now he's blind forever. This caused him to lose his job. He had a wife and kids and was the sole breadwinner. Story 19. Old coworker went to Vegas, felt really good about his odds due to the liquor, and ended up betting his entire life savings on roulette and lost. He ended up losing his house, his wife, kids, and from what I've seen he lives in a tiny apartment and works a minimum wage job. Story 20. Dude several years our junior, on the fringe of the friend group, was spiraling into depression. Decided to end it with a shotgun. Didn't get the angle right. Blew his jaw and face off. Literally. It's not for nothing that I've said ever since, there are worse things than dying. Story 21. 3 guys in high school decided to speed on the backroads after practice. Lost control, driver was decapitated, passenger, who was being scouted, had severe brain damage and unable to walk, eat, etc. on his own, and the third may have walked away, but for the rest of his life will have to live with the trauma. Great bunch of guys, just heartbreaking. If you've gotten this far and enjoying the content, please leave a comment of your own story. We'd love to make a video of them in the future. Story 22. A friend of my parents was a good family man who loved his family. One day he was playing with his toddler and was playfully tossing her on the bed. She would get back up giggling and he would toss her again. In one of the tosses he threw her a bit too far and she hit a bedpost. She lived but became bedbound, unable to even talk. Not quite vegetable but close. He went to jail on child abuse. Lost his wife, his job and his little girl would never be the same. The guilt was so much he ended it as soon as he could. Story 23. My cousin got back into drugs after having his life together and doing well for a long time. He started losing his she. Apparently he had some underlying schizophrenia they think the drug use brought out. He took a rifle to a store parking lot and shot a guy, ran over his body then had a police standoff. Said he shot the president or some crazy shit like that. Needless to say he ruined his life, took another and destroyed another family in the process. Story 24. A 30-plus-year district-renowned high school band director retires from teaching. High-end retirement party with a good amount of past students and colleagues celebrating his career. Daughter just had her first child. He's seemingly a happy grandfather with a happy marriage and happy life. 1 year later he gets caught talking to a 13-year-old girl who turned out to be law enforcement undercover. Spends the next 20 years in federal prison. Story 25. Knew a guy my freshman year of college. Easily the most socially awkward person I've ever met. Not necessarily a bad guy but a really weird one. He was expelled for making a bomb threat. No idea what happened to him after that but I can't imagine anything good. Story 26. Guy I knew, married and with 2 kids. He'd been adopted as a baby and reconnected with his bio family, including his 10-year-old sister who he was excited to get to know. She came to visit him planning to spend a few weeks with his family. Her first day there, he tried to molest her. She got away from him, ran to the bathroom and called 911. He lost his job, most of his friends, and, we thought at the time, his wife. She took him back when he got out of prison though. Story 27. Friend of mine from a wealthy Middle Eastern family didn't quite ruin his life but FD'd it up for a while. Was in Canada on a student visa but was working after graduating and had applied for permanent residency. Got rejected, so he took out every credit card he could find and ran them all up because he was leaving the country forever that week. Tells his parents he is coming home and why. Mom makes a few phone calls and turns out the kid had screwed up some paperwork and it was no problem to get it fixed up and approved. That was 15 years ago and he still lives here, but his credit card debt was more than his annual salary and his parents, correctly, told him he was an idiot and to pay it himself. He also lost out on a job opportunity the next year because his credit was such a disaster. Story 28. Had a friend in college. We were both training to be pilots. His dad owned an insurance company and gave him the company's credit card to pay for all his flight hours with. He got about 2 years in when he finished his first license which costed $30,000 to $50,000. Got a DUI halfway through his second license. Pilot career down the drain. On top of that his father's company will be paying for it. Story 29. My dad used a dirty needle while doing drugs and got HIV. In 2008, he told us he was living with AIDS because of that one day. We have helped pay for the meds or his bills because he paid for his meds and didn't have the money ever since. Last summer, he got COVID and when the doc was talking to my sister on the phone she asked what special treatment he would need to have due to having AIDS. His doctor of 20 years said, "What? He doesn't have AIDS." We haven't talked to him since. Story 30. Middle management type man where I used to work came into the office every other day. He was known to be a stand-up guy, good family man, even a good boss, as good as it gets when it comes to management at least. He got caught having sex with the new hire. Lost his job, his marriage, and his kids stopped talking to him. That was 2 years ago. The last news I got was that he's living in a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor and already spent half his savings on alcohol. Story 31. He didn't properly secure a ladder on a building site. He then fell off said ladder and fractured 3 vertebrae. Lucky enough not to be paralyzed, but he spent nearly 2 months in hospital and then 3 months in a body cast from his armpits to his asshole. His missus took this opportunity to leave him for a yuppie scumbag, taking his kids with her. He's been battling with depression and chronic pain for over a decade since then. Story 32. A co-worker of mine who had a very successful management-level job at a big corporation paralyzed themselves from the waist down after trying to climb up a rain pipe on a drunken dare. They couldn't work for almost a year, returned in a very junior position, and were basically making minimum wage. Their life savings disappeared in a couple of months despite them being amazing at saving, and last I saw them they were made redundant when COVID hit. No idea what their situation is now. Story 33. I worked for a company that had a very prestigious grad program. Getting in and completing it was a fast track to senior management either in our firm or any other in our industry. We treated them very well and had a social event for the new intake. One of the grads sexually assaulted one of the other grads. She decided not to take it to the police, even though we encouraged her to and offered her all the support she needed to deal with it. Needless to say, he was immediately fired and blackballed from the entire industry. One of the senior managers who recruited the guy took his mistake very personally and has been following his career closely via LinkedIn. Every time he gets a half-decent job, a discreet phone call is made and he fails his probation. Story 34. Pushed his girlfriend down a flight of stairs in front of almost everyone he knew, seconds after she announced to everyone that she was pregnant with his kid. I ain't sure if she miscarried or if she just decided not to have that psycho's kid, but he spent a few years in prison over it and he ain't welcome anywhere no more. She walks with a cane at 30. Story 35. Had a friend who was a compulsive spender. Buys a $9,000 sports motorcycle. Spend $1,200 getting it customized. Trade it in 9 months later for $3,000 towards another new one. Guy could probably have a house and be ahead on mortgage with all of the money he spent on stuff he was stupid about. Well, one day, he must have put his credit card number into a hot singles in your area scam. Woke up and his bank account had been cleaned out. Needed to move back into his parents' house and declare bankruptcy. Also borrowed $1,000 from me that I never saw a cent of before he ghosted me. Sad thing about the situation is even though I did want the money back, I had no intention of disowning his friendship. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Thread Talk for more content like this. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out. Have a dope day and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers!